So if you're suffering with chronic anxiety and looking for another approach that works, you're in the right place. Greetings everyone, it's Jordan Parker, Middleweight Coaching, speaking to you from a lifelong trial and error with anxiety, sufferer of anxiety, and I have seen significant change in my life. I'm in my early 40s and I have battled anxiety since I was a kid. What I want to offer you today is something I don't see often, and it's a hidden link that I've discovered through my own experience that works. And that gem or golden rule is that your chronic anxiety will decrease to the degree that you increase your self-esteem. So just take a moment to think about, what does anxiety feed off of? What are the conditions that actually create it internally, inside? Typically, it's self-doubt, self-betrayal, perfectionism, fear of failure, uncertainty. So many of these things at their root are only able to exist in the absence of healthy self-esteem. So how does this work? First of all, what is self-esteem? Self-esteem is a combination of self-respect and self-love. Self-respect is a combination of dignity and responsibility. And self-love is a combination of care and commitment with ourselves. Whereas confidence might say, I can do this. Self-esteem says, whether or not I do this, I'm okay. And I'm gonna be okay. There's a difference there. So with real self-esteem, you're gonna feel resilience, trust, contentment, confidence, and connection. You're gonna need less certainty. You're gonna be able to move through and out of shame or guilt much quicker. You're going to set healthy boundaries and not betray yourself in situations you might have in the past. You definitely do less perfectionism because inherently you know your value. And because you trust yourself more, you don't have to try to control every outcome. If you just sit with those for a moment, you might get a physical somatic sense that anxiety is way less needed in those conditions. So how do we build self-esteem? Well, here's the good news and the bad news. The answer is it's hard earned. So it's not an overnight thing, but also no one can take it away from you once you built it, because you built it one choice at a time. And some of the ways to do that are, number one, practicing honesty. The more honest you are and are willing to be, the less you're hiding, and the more you can stand on your word and your self-expression, and there's a sense of dignity that comes with that. Part of that is keeping promises to yourself, not to yourself, but with yourself. If you give your word, it's important that you keep your word, or do your best to. Setting healthy boundaries. This is also a work in progress and takes time, but setting healthy boundaries creates safety. You know where you begin and somebody else or something else ends. So self-care, which is really picking up where your parents left off or filling in the blanks, taking responsibility for your needs in all shapes and sizes, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. Sounds like a lot, but it's always a one thing at a time approach. These other two, you don't probably hear that often, but one is taking meaningful risks and learning to celebrate. It's important to take risks, especially if you are an anxious person, because at the end of the day, you got to be able to know what's real and what's not. And just as we practice honesty, we have to see the honesty of life. There's our thoughts about life, and then there is actually what life is presenting to us. And taking risks is figuring out what's the difference. Now, it's important to know your edge. And your edge is, where are you uncomfortable but not overwhelmed? Celebrating your wins. Probably even more important than taking risks is learning to celebrate yourself. This will significantly speed up your self-esteem. When you first start celebrating your wins, it can be a little awkward, no doubt, but I can tell you that it's essential. And I have lived experience with that, because I can tell you that on 2 different occasions, I had streaks of 1,000 or more days in a row of gratitude journal. And most of what I was grateful for that day was ways that I showed up for myself, i.e. victories, that I was celebrating. This significantly sped up my sense of inner self-esteem and having my own back. So the payoff here for building self-esteem is that you will have periodic breakthroughs that significantly up-level your life. Self-esteem is built one day at a time, but eventually those days stack together, compound, and you will have a breakthrough. And on the other side of the breakthrough, you will never quite feel the same. And I mean this in a good way. Part of what happens is not so much the absence of fear, it's more that your world gets bigger. You might have a similar amount of anxiety frequency in the background, but when your world is significantly bigger, it feels so much smaller than when your world was small and that anxiety was wrapped around you. So part of this payoff, in addition, is that you take more risks. You speak your truth. You set healthy boundaries, and you only enter into relationships that feel healthy and nourishing. And again, the backdrop of this is life is expanding, not because of the absence of fear, but because of what's more important than fear now in your life. So the hidden gem here is that no one can give you self-esteem, which also means that no one can take it away. You build it, and you do it one day at a time, one choice at a time. This is the greatest kind of wealth, because once your world expands and you really get connected to what it's like to have healthy self-esteem, you will never forget it. And maybe at times you might retract into feeling small, but those periods will be shorter and shorter, and you'll be able to move through it quicker. So I invite you to experiment here and try on one of these tools for building self-esteem, and just play around with what's it like when your world feels a little bit bigger, even just 10% bigger. What is the impact it has on any feelings of anxiety and who you know yourself to be? And I'd love to hear any challenges, reflections, or victories that you have as part of this process in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.